Welcome to the first ever episode of SARCan, Canada's Volunteer Search and Rescue podcast. For Volunteer SAR, about Volunteer SAR, by Volunteer SAR. My name is Patrick Armstrong, and beside me here is my co-host, Spencer Whitelaw. Glad you're here, Spencer.
Glad to be here, Patrick. Looking forward to this.
So you and I know each other. We've worked together, and I've included you in a number of projects, both good and ridiculous. But why don't you tell a little bit about yourself to the audience?
Well, I'm working really hard on trying to say no to you and all of these things that you dragged me into, but we'll see how this goes. We'll entertain it for a little bit, and I'll slowly try and make my exit without anybody noticing. I've been working in emergency services for close to a decade now, and I've been an avid community volunteer for close to 2 decades. So I found that search and rescue was a great way to kind of bridge those two gaps and address a need in society and also a need in myself. To help give back to the community. And who doesn't like getting together with some like-minded individuals and getting out there in nature and experiencing and trying to perform a good public service and having an excuse to buy a whole bunch of expensive gear that I don't need.
Yeah, search and rescue is a little bit of a money pit. And you do a lot of volunteering. You did a lot of volunteering before SAR, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I've been a part of it for nearly 2 decades, so I have my parents to blame for that, for dragging me into that. But it's completely shaped who my being is, and it's something I'll probably never be able to step away from. It's I never had much of a social life, if we're being completely honest, so this is a great way to make some friends moving forward and get involved in the community.
Yeah, you're talking to a guy who played Dungeons and Dragons in high school, so social life was never really keen for me. So
yeah, and I was raised on my Xbox. SARCan is produced by the Huron and Area Search and Rescue, or as we call it, SAR. SAR was formed in 2018 and covers South Roos, Perth, Huron, and Lambton counties within southwestern Ontario, with volunteer search and rescue, rope, and ice rescue, as well as the Canadian Coast Guard Unit 556.
This week, which is our first episode, we'll be talking about Canadian search and rescue, specifically ground SAR and marine SAR. I think one of the key things is trying to limit how many acronyms we speak. SARCan is presented by Axiom Mutual Insurance, keeping promises close to home. Axiom Mutual Insurance is a Canadian insurance company that is a member-owned and member-focused organization with core values of trust, passion, community, and agility.
And we're back with both our guests for this episode, where we're talking about volunteer search and rescue in Canada, both ground and marine. Today, we have Janelle Coultes, President of Search and Rescue Volunteer Association of Canada, and Gary Endicott, Vice President of the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary for Central and Arctic. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Spencer.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about you and your role in SARBAC?
Yes. So my name is Janelle Coultes. I've been with Search and Rescue for 17 years, and I am out of London, Ontario. So my own team is London Search and Rescue. But throughout the years, I've been very active at provincial and national levels. So currently, I'm also the president of the Search and Rescue Volunteer Association of Canada.
And Gary, tell us about yourself and your role with the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary.
All right. Well, I just finished my 52nd year as a member of Paramarine Search and Rescue, which is the local unit that I belong to. I'm a founding member of the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary, and we just celebrated our 45th anniversary. Immediate past Commodore of Paramarine, and I'm a coxswain of one of the crews in that unit. Just finished a 6-year term as a director, a year ago. So I'm starting my 2nd year as the vice president of Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary Central and Arctic. And as an FYI, there's actually 4 of us left that are founding members of the CCGA. So 4 of us have been around for the whole 45 years.
That's excellent. Well, thank you both. Janelle, we'll start with you. Talk us through the history of ground SAR, or GSAR, in Canada and how volunteers can become a part of that.
Sure. So ground search and rescue in Canada is administered by, there's government, military, volunteer groups, and police that are doing search and rescue. So what happens is typically when there's a missing person, there's a call out, there's teams that are activated, and who that falls under is going to depend on where we are in Canada. So there's a lot of different structure when it comes to who is in charge of the search itself. Ground search and rescue is also very involved in emergency management type responses. So for things like your floods, your fires, anything that's happening across Canada, that's where we have responses on those levels as well. So there's a lot of different agencies involved. It really, like I said, depends on where you're at with regards to location and whose jurisdiction that's going to fall under. And then we have a lot of the ground search and rescue side are all working together. So it might not just be a policing agency, for example. It might be police plus volunteers for a particular event.
And Gary, as a country with one of the longest coastlines in the world, not to mention our Great Lakes, and who would know better than the history of Marine SAR, especially in Ontario? Talk to us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, so sometime more than 45 years ago, there were several organizations doing marine search and rescue, usually in the bigger centers. So the ones that came to mind were Oshawa, Pickering, Oakville, Hamilton, and Sault Ste. Marie. But they all worked independent of each other, but still coordinated through the Joint Rescue Coordination Center. And I guess at some point, some of these folks got to talking and felt that there could be some advantages to working together. And the result of those discussions was the formation of what was then called the CMRA, or the Canadian Marine Rescue Association. Maybe 5 years after that, these folks decided that it might be helpful to have an umbrella organization. So then CCGA National was created, which is basically the 5 presidents from each of the regions that make that up. And they look after umbrella stuff. So our national award system, and the big thing is looking after the insurance. Sometime around then or just after that, we decided to change our name from CMRA to Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary to more better acknowledge the role, the significant role that the Coast Guard plays in our operation. I think I'll say 5 years ago, but maybe only 3 years ago, another region was created on the west side of Vancouver Island, so coastal First Nations. So in fact, now there's 7 regions in the CCGA.
Thank you.
Now, Janelle, with the Search and Rescue Volunteer Association of Canada, or SARVAC, being an association, what does that mean in regards to the unit themselves and the provinces throughout Canada?
So the SARVAC was started in 1996. And as I mentioned right at the beginning, my own team is London Search and Rescue. So that's a good example. Basically, there's about 300 teams across Canada. And each of those teams is a part of a provincial or territorial association. And then those associations are a part of our national association, which makes up SARVAC. So what that means is that SARVAC is representing all 300 teams across Canada, close to 10,000 volunteers. And we do have each province and territory as a part of our association. We're responsible for all of the land and inland waters when it comes to the search response that we're providing. But a big part of that as well is with regards to trying to have consistency, standardization, things that we can do the same across all of our provinces and territories with regards to our search and rescue response and efforts.
Now, Gary, the CCGA is set up totally different than SARVAC. SARVAC is that association. CCGA, however, is one giant organization with all the units underneath those same standard operating procedures and kind of umbrella. How else does that compare, differ, and work compared to SARVAC?
Probably somewhat the same. I mean, as I said, there's national guidelines that are issued, so they may or may not be as rigorously implemented across the regions. Each region is an autonomous organization and runs itself. But specific to Central and Arctic, if you before you can actually join the CCGA, you have to join a unit. So as I said, in my case, it's Paramarine Search and Rescue. There's other units all across around the Great Lakes and across the province. So you have to join one of them first, and then you then become a member of the CCGA. And those units, they're different flavors. So there's private units, which is basically somebody owns a boat and offers to provide SAR services in their local area. And usually their crews would be made up of family and friends. There's commercial boats, so commercial fishermen who tend to be out on the water a lot. And the crews obviously are whoever happens to be on board the vessel at the time. For us, so the coxswain would have to be a member of the CCGA, and the at least one other person has to be a member of the CCGA. But then the crews, if they're not all members, so it's not the same crew all the time, then they can be taken on as just people that are along, but covered. And then community boats, which work a lot like a volunteer fire department, where there's an umbrella organization, a not-for-profit that owns the vessel generally, and you have a board of directors that's elected, and then a commodore or a commander, depending on the unit and the nomenclature they use, that drives the organization, and then structures that fall out of that. And those units, some of it's based on the seasons. Obviously, the units in the north aren't in the water as long. For the organization I belong to, we put the boat goes in the water as soon as we can in April. Either it's finished, whatever work was being done on it, or the ice is gone. We start our weekend cruise up on the May 2-4 weekend, and we run cruise every weekend till Thanksgiving. And then beginning in June, we have weeknight cruise on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and they run till the middle of September. And then the boat stays in the water till beginning of November, end of November, depending on, again, ice, temperature, etc. And then when we don't have scheduled cruise, we have people on a roster. So we're available 24/7 once the boat goes in the water.
And are you a community unit? I know in Hazar, we're a community unit.
Yes. Yeah. The unit I belong to is a community unit. So we can have the, up to 50 people. And we usually try to bump around that 50 cap. You try and leave a couple of spots in case, somebody comes along and you can get somebody that's really, could be a benefit to the organization. But, when you've got that many crews going on the water, you need that many bodies to make it work.
Absolutely. Janelle, SARVAC has definitely grown in recognition from the Canadian government in the past few years. What are some of the SARVAC projects across Canada? I know the humanitarian workforce being one of them, but you can touch on that as well as any other projects that SARVAC's
Yeah, so SARVAC has actually a number of projects because there's a lot of things that we're involved with when it comes to search and rescue. So we're always working on the search and rescue response, but we're also working on prevention. So we're looking at what can we do to make sure that people are not going missing in the first place. And that's another big part of what SARVAC is working on. The humanitarian workforce itself is looking at incorporating different organizations all together and improving emergency management response. So what that means is that if there are things that are happening across Canada, like floods or tornadoes or anything bigger that's happening on the climate side, those are things that we want to be able to improve our responses. And we're looking at what can we do within the search and rescue realm to be able to provide that response. So that's where some of our humanitarian workforce efforts come from. SARVAC has a project right now that we're working on, and it's incorporating other non-governmental organizations as well, including the Red Cross, St. John Ambulance, Salvation Army, Team Rubicon. And what that means is that we are building up our capabilities to be able to respond to communities in need when it comes to emergency management type disasters. So if there's a flood, tornado, anything that's hitting across Canada, our teams are always activated kind of at the local and regional level. We've been involved for, 50 years on helping with things like that. But when it comes to augmented response and working together with other agencies, that's something that the humanitarian workforce is striving to do. So SARVAC has been putting a lot of energy into that side of it for our volunteers. So that includes increasing training, increasing resources, increasing equipment, and making sure that our members are ready to respond when it comes to those types of events across Canada. We also have another project working on GSAR standards. Now, that one has been going on for close to 10 to 12 years overall, but we are at the point where we do have ground search and rescue standards that have been implemented through CSA, and those now are consistent across Canada. So that means if you have this certification and you are a ground searcher in one province, that's recognized as being a ground searcher in another province. Same with team leader, same with search manager. So those are things that prior to this particular initiative have not been something that was ever put in place nationally before. So that's something that SARVAC was able to roll out. Currently, we have one that's just started that's very similar idea, but we are looking at canine standards. So that's a brand new project that's just getting underway. So you'll be hearing more about that in the future. We also have another new one that's just underway, and that's for increasing SAR prevention in remote and Indigenous communities. So for the prevention side, SARVAC has been involved with an initiative called Adventure Smart, and that has been underway for just over 20 years. And that particular program is about teaching groups of people. It could be children, it could be community groups, just people in general, about being safe, how to be outdoors, how to enjoy nature, but at the same time, take some steps so that you're not going to be one of the people we need to go search for. At the moment, those are our biggest initiatives that we have going on for the SARVAC side. We always have more that's coming out with regards to training, especially, and some of the upcoming things where we are getting more involved at the emergency management level. So that's a big part of our initiatives right now.
That's excellent, Janelle. Prevention is incredibly important. To be able to avoid having to search for somebody in the first place is a huge win for us. And sometimes those stats are hard to quantify, but they're incredibly important. So thank you. Gary, you've been in the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary for quite some time, as we mentioned. I imagine you've seen quite a bit of changes over your time. What are some of the significant and pivotal developments and advancements with the CCGA that you've seen in your time, and where do you see the CCGA headed in the future?
Okay, yeah, lots of change. I was actually chuckling when I was putting some notes together for this because like at the equipment level, when I first started on the vessel that we had two radios, a citizens band radio that we communicated to other boaters with, and a fire department radio that we dispatched to the Pickering Fire Department at that time. And then for navigation, we had a pencil, parallel rules, a chart, and a set of dividers. And that was pretty much the equipment on board. And now, we still have a radio where we can talk to the fire department. We have 2 fixed VHFs. We have portable VHF. Everybody on board wears a wireless headset, so we constant communication with everybody, no issues around the noise. 2 GPS systems feeding multiple panels. I mean, it's like night and day, to say the least, as far as the kit goes. Much greater emphasis on training. The training has evolved over the years to where we're at today. In the past, we just handed out our own certificates, whereas now, when you complete our training, you get Transport Canada certificates, and we'll talk about that more later on. Bigger push on first aid to get people trained up, and the bogey for that is Transport Canada Marine Basic, so beyond just a St. John's first aid training. And then other training as well, other emergency training, organizational training, where we've been trying to make some inroads with the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, our partners in the U.S., to avail ourselves of some of their leadership training, and individual units, depending on their geographic location. We'll also do some on-water training with our U.S. counterparts. So lots of that. As for direction, I see our organization continuing to grow. There's a bigger effort for us as well to reach First Nations communities, and we've had a couple of new ones stood up. Postal Lake First Nation being one of them. More opportunities for us to participate in Marine SAR. We used to do 25% nationally of all the SAR cases, Marine SAR cases. We're up to doing about 30% now, so that's growing. And then as far as ongoing changes, one thing that hasn't changed is our organizational structure is exactly the same as it was on day one. And I think we finally figured out that maybe that's not working as well for us as it should or could. So we have an organizational committee that has been struck to analyze that. We've hired a company that deals in structure with nonprofits to work with us. And we're looking forward to the results of that and how that might drive us forward into the future. So lots of history to build on and lots of changes as time has moved on.
When you talk about the chart and having the dividers and the slide rule, we were just teaching that a little while ago, and we have that generation looking at us like, why do we use this when we have GPS? So we've gone back to kind of the basics on it as well.
Yeah, we still push that because, you have all, I tell the young guys, I say, you got all this gee-whiz equipment inside, but you might want to look out the window once in a while, because the person you're looking for, that's where they are. They're not on one of these screens, so you can't forget that part. So
Call Spencer the young guy because he likes to make fun of my age. So that's where the difference would be. I'd be with the slide rule, and Spencer, you'd be with the GPS.
well, it sounds like, Patrick, you and I are on the same team then, because I'm exactly the same.
But we work well in tandem because it's important to have those different perspectives when it comes to BSAR and training, and you always got to be
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely.
Let's face it, you're the one that has the less technical difficulties than I do. So, Janelle, SARVAC's all about partnerships internally and provincially. What about the partnership SARVAC has nationally or even internationally?
So SARVAC is always striving to increase our partnerships nationally, and we're looking at some of the different ones we've had over all of the years, but also increasing our work that we're doing with some of the other agencies. So currently, we've always had good relationships with policing agencies across Canada, whether that's national, if it is provincial or territorial, or even just regional or local. A lot of our teams are integrated into policing agencies. But when it comes to the governmental agencies, that's something where federally we're very involved with the government as well there. So we're active with the Government Operations Center. And what that means is that if there is a call out, that any information comes in for something that we would be able to help respond to at the national level, that's something that we're always working to increase that level of connection with the federal government as well. So that's a big one. The other is with regards to some of our fellow organizations. So as I mentioned, some of us are already working together for some of the projects that are ongoing. But if we're looking at Red Cross, for example, or Salvation Army, St. John Ambulance, those organizations, we find that we're always on site working together when it comes down to it at the end of the day. So if it's boots on the ground, responding to something, these are the agencies that we're going to be hand in hand with when we're responding to those calls anyway. So at the federal level, we're looking at what can we do to all of us have a little bit better response right off the bat. So striving to not just increase the communication, but always looking at things like our training and our call outs and what can we do to work together with those agencies as well.
I've long said I think the days of silos are gone. And it's all about integration and working together to get the best out of all the teams. Gary, I've been through the phase training in the past with the CCGA, but tell us about the training standards. What is phase training? And I know there's a lot of confusion about the new replacement for the Med A3. What does that look like?
All right. Well, yes. So to join the organization, other than the Arctic, because you don't need the PCOC up there. So to get in, you need a pleasure craft operator card. And within 18 months of joining, you need a ROC-M, which is a restricted operator certificate in Marine. So you can use a Marine VHF radio. So that's the starting point. And then within 18 months of joining, you have to go through our phase training. So we start with phase 1, which is our introduction to boat handling, navigation, search and rescue, seamanship, knot tying, how to tie the boat up, that kind of stuff. And then within 18 months after that, so within 36 months of joining up, then you have to go through phase 2, which is just phase 1 amped up. So more knot tying, more navigation, more boat handling, more SAR courses, more search patterns, all that good stuff. And when you finish those 2 courses, we could then award Transport Canada certificates, the SVOP, so Small Vessel Operator Proficiency, and Med-ED A3, which is a Marine Emergency Duties A3 level. Now, Transport Canada has since decided to delete Med-A3 and replaced it with SDV-BS, so Small Domestic Vessel Boating Safety. So what we have had to do, because it adds components to the what was MEDA 3. So the 3 big things are firefighting, abandoning ship, and being able to put on a Gumby suit or a floater suit. So we have had to develop another module that augments our phase training. So for members that require this, you'll have to do phase 1, phase 2, and the module for the SDVBS. And then when all that's done, you'll get an SVOP, the same as before, and you'll get the new SDVBS certificate. So we've completed our package, our training package. It was submitted to Transport Canada in May. We're still waiting to hear from them.
I'm thinking we need a course on just acronyms in search and rescue. Hard to keep track of.
So the guy I used to work at Bell for almost 37 years, and it was all acronym soup. So this is kind of works for me. But yeah, it's annoying if you don't,
For sure.
I used to call them TLAs, 3-letter acronyms, but now we're at 5 letters all the time. So,
So in terms of development, Gary, you said that you saw Marine Search and Rescue, the goal being expanding north and continuing to develop. Janelle, with SARVAC being a national organization, and looking after all of Canada and all of our great vast terrain and different locations and all the different stakeholders that you have to work with, where do you see ground search and rescue developing on a national level in the future?
So I would say that we're always looking to build on our capabilities. We're working together with other agencies like Coast Guard Auxiliary and Casera so that we're covering, ground, air, and water as much as possible when we're working together on these responses. But a big part of it is just in general how we're able to serve our communities. So some of our different, as you mentioned, the terrain is so different across Canada. The training that we do is consistent. Our teams in general are training every 2 weeks or so. A lot of our specialty teams are training weekly and or throughout the week. So we have people that are putting in, hundreds of hours within the year. But those are things that are all just looking at being able to be ready to go when we have a call out. And because we're also able to be called using these same skills for things that are starting to affect Canada, especially with regards to some of the climate change, those are the types of responses that we're really building on for our future capabilities as well. So our searches for missing people one by one, that's something we will always do. We always have done. And our teams are very adept at doing that because that's what we're training towards. But when we're looking at some of these additional capabilities and responses that we're able to provide, because we have such a wide selection of people and skills that are available across Canada, that's what we're starting to draw from for some of these climate change type callouts and emergency management events that we're building on. So it's an ongoing thing. It's something that we're excited about in that we have a lot of really good volunteers that are willing to put in the time and energy and effort to not just train, but also train above and beyond so that they're able to be able to help as much as possible.
That's amazing. There's so much more that's beyond just the surface of search and rescue. Somebody who's not experienced or exposed to that world would see it just as 5 or 6 people doing a line search through the woods and calling out, but it clearly goes so much more deeper than that. So I know you've got your work cut out for you, and we thank you for all that you look after with SARVAC. That's a big task that you're handling.
Thank you.
One last question for both of you. Why did each of you personally choose to volunteer in SAR, and what have your experiences been like? Gary, if you want to start.
Yeah. So when I was 14 years old, my father and I took a safe boating course, and the guys that taught that course were members of what was then called Paramarine. And then as now, they're always looking for volunteers. And so when they did their little presentation at the end of the course, and I heard about that, I thought, this is really cool. So I was too young then to join. And back then you could join at 16. You have to be 18 now. So as soon as I turned 16, I joined. And, I was the thought about being able to help somebody out. But probably more than it just seemed like a really cool opportunity and a great opportunity to experience something different. And, if you know anything about boats, they cost a lot of money. So I was getting to ride on somebody else's boat and they were paying for it. Not quite the same because you don't necessarily go where you want to go, but it was just the opportunity, a chance to learn something new and to help people out. And then, the experiences after that, it's been incredibly rewarding. Like there's just nothing better than somebody's having a really bad day and you can go out and make it better. There was a gentleman was sailing across Lake Ontario from St. Catharines, and maybe he could have looked a little harder at the weather forecast, but got out in a bad storm in a sailboat and knocked the rudder off. So he was obviously a great sailor. He sailed across the lake using a bucket on a rope off the stern to steer. But when he got to Frenchman's Bay, he couldn't get in. So we had to go out and tow him in. And we got him alongside, and then you could see the guy looking down and like he was talking to somebody. And he said something, and then these two little kids popped up. So it wasn't just him.
Wow.
So it was a really good feeling.
No, you can definitely feel that and hear that, Gary. That's for sure.
So that's why I do it.
I think that tells the story just in itself. Janelle, yourself?
So I started a similar idea, is that it was actually through a friend of mine, and they were a part of this really cool team, and that was kind of where that came from. So I started because of a friend back 17, almost 18 years ago now. And at that time, didn't really know a lot about search and rescue structure across the teams or across Ontario, in my case, or across Canada. And worked to not just be involved with the team, but was very interested in augmenting what we could do kind of even within a local level at that time. So I got very involved with that side of it right off the bat as much as I could. But similar to what Gary was just mentioning, it very quickly became apparent that not only is our team important when it comes to responding to anything in the community, but the fact that we're able to contribute to society, we're able to contribute to things across Canada, as I know very well now, but we're saving lives at the end of the day. So to be out on those searches, I mean, my own team has been out that has not just our team in general, but also I've been in the groups that have found people and that have saved people. Similar to Gary, one that stands out for me, we have a number of times that we've saved people that would not have made it another night. So if we have people that are out in the cold, they're stuck somewhere in the woods. I'm from London, as I mentioned, and London, Ontario is known as the forest city, for a reason. We have forested areas everywhere here. So we're out and able to find people that are stuck in situations that they would not make it another night. And to be able to get those people to safety and help them and save them is a remarkable feeling that it's something that just makes it that much better. That's why we train. That's why we do what we do, so that we're able to provide help when it's needed, right? So I often have people ask, because personally, with the number of hours that go into things search and rescue, they're looking at how do you have the time or fit that into the day or that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to this is a priority because it can actually help somebody. So for that reason, I think it's something that is very rewarding, but also very cool. As Gary mentioned, it's good at the end of the day. When you're working with a team, you have a lot of good technology, a lot of good people, but able to save people.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that we have two people who are both so incredibly passionate in this organization, in their respective organizations, for the right reasons, and incredibly knowledgeable on their subject matters, both in positions that can lead and make the appropriate changes moving forward in their respective fields. So thank you both for being such driving forces in your respective fields. And being in this your respective organizations for the right reasons. You're not in it for the glory or for the T-shirt. Obviously, the camaraderie is something great that comes along with it. You make some lasting friendships that are going to last for a lifetime. But you're both in this for the right reason. So I thank you both for that. So thank you again to our guests we've had on our podcast here today. Janelle Coultes, President of the Search and Rescue Volunteer Association of Canada, or SARBAC. And Gary Endicott, our Vice President of the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary, or CCGA, for the Central and Arctic regions of Canada. Thank you both for coming and joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Before we go, one of the sections that we use in Hazar to do kind of a shout out towards our members is these are the people in your neighborhood. And I don't know, Spencer, if that rings a bell for you Did you grow up watching Sesame Street?
I was a bit more of a Barney generation, but I'm familiar with the Sesame Street, yes.
Can you sing the song, These Are the People in Your Neighborhood?
No.
We want to bring that to SARCan so that we can highlight not just search and rescue units throughout Canada, but also the searchers themselves. So I guess since we started this, we can do our first shout out. It's going to be to Bart Sherman of the London Search and Rescue. Bart, along with Janelle, is one of the members of SAR unit, and I've known the longest since getting into search and rescue. And his role in the Ontario Search and Rescue Volunteer Association as a West Region Director is vital. And I think most importantly, he's truly a good friend. So, Bart, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you for listening to SARCan, Canada's Volunteer Search and Rescue podcast, brought to you by Axiom Mutual Insurance. SARCan is pre-recorded and produced by the Huron and Area Search and Rescue and edited by Bad Puppy Productions.
Well, Spencer, it's been great working with you on our first of, I'm sure, many episodes. To our listening audience, SARCan is driven by your suggestions and your comments. So if you have any ideas for a topic, if you're a subject matter expert, would like to talk, or you want to highlight your team or a member of your team, please give us a shout out. You can contact us through the Hazar social media or at sarcan@hazar.ca. SARCan for Volunteer SAR, about Volunteer SAR, by Volunteer SAR. And on behalf of Spencer and I want to thank you for listening, and to all the SAR volunteers out there and all that you do for our communities. Please be safe.
Yay!